Excellent. So thank you all for being here. Thank you to the students. Thank you to the panelists. We're really excited to welcome our most recent class of Excelsior Fellows here today to talk about their experience both in the fellowship and leading up to it. So we're really fortunate to have Molly, Chris, Nelkis, and Batulga here to talk all about it. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and start with the first question. Before I get started, actually, I'll let my colleague Christina introduce herself to the students who are on the call. If you don't know that, I guess I haven't introduced myself either. I'm Ashley Dwyer, and I'm the Director of Career Services and Employer Relations here at Rockefeller. And I'll pass it to Christina, and then we'll get started.
All right. And hi, everyone. I'm Christina Cardona, and I'm the coordinator for internships and career programming here at Rockefeller.
Excellent. All right, so we'll kick it off with the first question, which is just more introductory in nature. And I guess before we get started, I'll also mention to the students, there absolutely will be time for your questions. I want to prioritize that. So I'm going to start with a few questions to kick it off, but certainly hoping to leave a good portion of the latter half for questions. So you're welcome to put them in the chat, or you're welcome to, which I would recommend, just ask live, unmute yourself when the time comes. So to kick it off with the first question, if you can just start by introducing yourself and your current fellowship placement, as well as how your Rockefeller degree program helped prepare you for the fellowship and for your career. And whoever wants to get started is fine with me.
I don't mind going. I'm Molly. I am currently a fellow at the Office of Employee Relations in the Benefit Management Unit, which this was new to me when I started, but the New York State employment is split up into 10 unions, and those unions get to collectively bargain their benefits and everything that, time off, all of that every few years. And my unit is in charge of bargaining and negotiating all of the health insurance information. So that all of the contracts actually expire this year. So it puts us at a very, very busy time. But I think that my Rockefeller program really prepared me for kind of knowing everything that goes around in state government. Like, you will quickly realize that being from the Albany area, or at least knowing things about what's going on in Albany, prepares you a lot more than your fellow peers who might be from Buffalo or from, that just kind of knowing the ins and outs is very helpful. I also had previous experience. I worked at the assembly while I was doing my master's degree, which I think also kind of prepared me in knowing the ins and outs of Albany, because I think that the best thing to prepare yourself is just knowledge, like reading the newspaper every day, kind of just getting to know what is out there is the best way to kind of prepare yourself.
Awesome.
Hi, everyone. My name is Chris. Oh, wait, can you guys hear me? Sorry, I froze for a second.
All good, Chris. Thank you.
All right, perfect. So hi, I'm Chris. I'm placed in the New York State Department of Transportation in the commissioner's office. So a very unique role. I get to work directly for the commissioner, which is pretty cool. And to answer the second part of your question, yeah, Rockefeller is just absolutely amazing. I would say with the degree program, like the applied learning that's included in Rockefeller, maybe compared to undergrad, is like a huge step in the direction towards the professional world. And thinking of like specific courses that helped me, I would say data models and decisions, just because you're going to be able to navigate Excel and sort of like that landscape, and you will, trust me, you will use that a lot if you work in state government. And another course, I think, public management, intro to public management, I also think was really good for putting you into real world examples of what it's going to be like in the workplace. And I guess I'll also give just a little bit more background about myself. Prior to being in the fellowship, I worked, as Ashley had said earlier, in the state assembly for a couple of years, and I worked in the chamber for about a year. Yeah, so that's me.
I can go next if that's okay. My name is Tolga. Bear with me. My office and my fellowship has a long description. So I'm with the Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Services. Within that Office of Counterterrorism, and within that Cyber Incident Response Team. So what we do is we provide proactive and reactive cybersecurity services to about more than 17,000 state, local, territorial, local governments. So that can include counties, cities, villages, you name it. So in our line of work, we have, of course, it's mostly technical part where we provide assistance in incidents, for example, or also help our customers, we call them, as they are, prepare or mitigate or recover from cyber incident, which has been growing, and probably most of you realize that we live in such a world. But to answer more of the question, since I did a PhD and graduated last May, and my PhD is broadly in digital government, so it was very, in that sense, the topic itself was very transferable, gave me a good contextual background. At the same time, I would say really because PhD has to do a lot to do with research. I think the ability to analyze and to gather unstructured data and summarize it at high level with implications for practice and policy, and perhaps with a bit more seeing patterns, that really helps me my day-to-day work to prepare briefs and also in different policy evaluation tasks that I've been involved in my agency. So far, I would say those things helped me prepare for the fellowship.
Right, I'll go. My name is Nelkis Molina. I previously did a master's in political science, so a little bit different from I think everyone else in the program. A little bit of experience about me. I used to work with the assembly last semester. I was a graduate scholar for last year's session, and then I worked with Chris for almost a year at Chamber. And I did a little bit of local government as well. I worked for some council members in New York City and for a nonprofit organization in Queens. What best prepared me for the fellowship, I would say, is a lot of the group work. I think, oh, sorry, I forgot to mention I work for the Department of Health and Intergovernmental and Governmental Affairs. So I think overall, Rockefeller having the group projects and everything helped a lot with my work right now because none of the work that I do is individual. I would say it's always working with someone on something or delivering something to someone and then editing. It's a lot of editing and back and forth. So having a lot of communication with other students has helped being able to communicate and get deliverables that are needed for us. Another thing I would say is I think Intro to Public Policy was very, very helpful. I think most of the time, a lot of great ideas are always thrown around, but the fact is that if they're being implemented or not, and if they're feasible or not. So you could have a great idea, but sometimes there is so much more than just the idea. It's fiscal, it's the fact that the department could do it, workforce, all these things that we discussed in class. And everything is just seeing and play. And yeah, overall, I think experience and education combined both helped me a lot with what I'm doing at my current role.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Some of you started to touch on this, so this will be a good segue. But what have you learned most from your fellowship thus far? And what are some of the benefits and challenges within your role? I know it's fairly new, but just from your most recent perspective, I figured that would help the students. Again, whoever feels like diving in first. I hate calling down people because then I put them on the spot.
Guess we can go in the same order. So I've learned a lot, and generally just I didn't even know that there was honestly unions as part of a New York State service and that there were so many. And then my unit specifically works with civil service to do the Empire Plan and the HMOs, which is night ship insurance, which we cover about 1 million covered lives across New York State, and it is one of the biggest healthcare plans across the entire United States, which I went into the fellowship thinking I wanted to do something with health, and didn't really see any of the options at DOH that I really liked and was just kind of worried, what was going to be the next step. And then this opportunity kind of jumped out at me, and it's been a really cool idea or way to kind of do health in another way. So that's been really cool. I think, what was the second part of the question? I'll pull it up. Benefits, challenges.
Benefits, challenges. Yep.
Now, keeps bringing up working with people was perfect. Like thought I was going to be done with group work after graduating, and you were never ever done with group work. And there's a lot of patience that has to be had with like just because it's not the way you want to do it does not mean it's not the way it's going to be done. So a lot of, oh, sure, no problem. Like whatever you want to do is really quickly learned in state service, I think. I know I mentioned this before, but I think a big challenge is just it's a big learning curve for a lot of people, and a lot of my fellows who came from other areas and didn't have the internship or the experience that everybody has talked about here with like being in chamber, being an assembly intern, that the fellowship really tries to support us in kind of doing like a crash course information about like what the different branches do and how the budget process works. But the experiences or the classwork you guys have in state government will prepare you so much so you don't even know when doing it. And like kind of even knowing who the lieutenant governor is, it would be like a very big bonus that I think some people just don't know offhand until they're kind of in it and realize that like, even if you're only working for DOH, you are impacted by what everybody else is doing across New York State, and that like some decision that somebody made at an agency 1,000 miles away is going to impact you in some way. So just kind of being aware of everything going around you. And like, I know Chris, I think, was kind of hinting at that he was going to talk about it. The first few months are very quiet in some ways, and it takes a very long time for you to get real work. So using that time to like be as up to date as the goings on around is possible, and kind of finding like work that you can just do, I think would be, very, very helpful, and like a good way to prepare yourself for the interview process, and kind of highlighting like the reason you stand out by like against another person who's applying for the fellowship.
It's hard to go after Molly. She has such great answers to all these questions. All right. Well, I will piggyback off of something you said, and then maybe I'll take it a slightly different direction. So with my fellowship experience, the first, I think it's been 4.5 months so far. So far with my supervisors and sort of the structure of where I'm at, the first few months were sort of like putting me into a position just to learn as much information as possible, sort of just to be a sponge. So my agency, DOT, is it over 8,000 employees, 8,300, something like that. So in an agency that big, you're going to have a lot of diversification of roles. So there's like engineering, operations, communications, legal, and you can just keep going down the line. So there's so many different things that some of the agencies that you're going to be placed in, there's so many different aspects to each agency. It's not as simple as, oh, you work in Department of Labor, maybe you're just going to be focused on strictly labor-based issues, or transportation, you think you're just going to be dealing with that. But then you realize it's such a giant web of everything going on. And depending on your role, you might not be able just to dive right into the deep end and just know how to do everything and know how to address certain work. So I'd say in terms of like a challenge, I would say if you're coming from a role like I was, where you're just super, super fast paced, you're doing things left and right. Maybe going to an agency will be a little bit of a change of pace, but that also provides an opportunity for you to sit back, maybe just have your anxiety levels or anything a little bit lower, and just taking that time to learn as much as possible, especially if there are websites or like SharePoints involved with whichever agency you're with. You could really just take a deep dive and try to understand that as much as possible. And I'd say you can leverage that to your benefit in a lot of ways. If you do come to the fellowship and you have a lot of time, you can go around, you can talk to people. Wouldn't say use the term networking, but I guess you could. But just try to talk to a lot of coworkers, understand what their role is. And if you have additional time, you can see how you can assist them in any way, and you can build relationships while also improving your own skills. And okay, I've only talked about challenges. Let me mention a benefit or two. So in my role, I work directly for the Commissioner of Transportation, Marie-Therese Dominguez. So in my role, I have a very unique opportunity because I travel with her a lot. We've been to the city, we've been to New Jersey, we've been to Buffalo, Syracuse, Rochester. A lot of travel is to do with my role, which like travel's okay for certain people, but you could also take advantage again, learn as much as possible. But it depends who you're with. Like a lot of the times I'll travel with the commissioner directly or some of the assistant commissioners and just ask questions. Just ask questions, try to absorb as much as possible. And that would be my advice for the first few months once you get into there.
Following the order. Yes, I think what I learned the most was obviously about cybersecurity because cybersecurity is part of digital government, but it's not directly my field. But I learned a lot about cybersecurity and the state role. And given that also, of course, we have a home rule in New York State and really the structure of how governments interact at different levels to have a statewide cybersecurity in place and different stakeholders, which I had a kind of more or less assumption before, but now I know more and what it really takes. At the same time, I learned a lot about strategy and policy making at Dishes. That's one of the couple of tasks I was involved in, contributing to Homeland Security Strategy 2026-2028, and really trying to help support with evidence and what's out there, and really connecting multiple documents we have. So synthesizing, which is a common skill that we learn. So that was helpful. At the same time, also, this is, I think, it speaks to benefits a bit. In my team, we also offer professional development opportunities, which are like certificates, cybersecurity certificates that you can carry on with your life and very highly respected in the industry, like those from CrowdStrike and those from Try Hack Me and different organizations. So you can, and they have different levels. So there are basic, which I'm actually doing, managerial level. So, in reality, those cost thousands and thousands of dollars. So our agency provides us a benefit, so you can enroll in those. And if you are really have coding skills, of course, you can enroll in the more technical ones. And with that certificate, you can go anywhere in the future in cybersecurity. So that's one of the benefits. And as far as challenges, I think, more reflect on myself because, for example, I know a bit, as you know, AI is such a hot topic and everybody is talking about AI. And I did some research about AI, but more from a general perspective and different aspects, but not the cybersecurity aspect, which I wish I've done before. So I had to really also educate myself and learn and get myself up to speed to a certain level of proficiency, because once a lot of people realized that I have PhD, I think they thought that I will be able to pull information together quickly and synthesize for them. So I was tapped to provide some of the advice with AI and cybersecurity and some of the legislature that have been proposed and actually signed 2 weeks ago by the governor. So that was a bit intimidating at the same time, but really some of the things that a challenge that I actually faced myself. It's more of a rather personal challenge rather than a challenge that was placed by agency, so to say. So that's what I would say.
Okay, I'm gonna piggyback with everyone now that I'm going last. One of my biggest things that I've learned about the fellowship is just the department itself. I think when you think of Department of Health, you honestly just go through Medicaid or Medicare, anything related to healthcare. But we do so much more than that. Like I deal with constituent cases about like birth certificates, which I never even thought that we did, but apparently we do. So that has been one of the most important things I've learned. I've also helped a lot with filling out grant applications. So seeing how the federal government is working nowadays, everything every day is something new. It's not like I have specific tasks every day that stay the same. It just depends on what is going on. And then that kind of shapes my workday for the day. Some of my benefits I would say is I have a really small team for OGA, at least for the governmental affairs office. I think it's like 5 or 6 of us. So given that it's small, it's easy to um, be able to communicate with everyone. So if I ask, do we all have access to each other's calendars? If I see that it's something I like, I could hop on or go to events that I want to. But I am going to say that the challenges is it does go a bit slower coming from the assembly. I was always running into chamber, dropping off bills, going to bill draft, going to index. Like I knew my way around the place. Like I was always running around somewhere. And with agency work, it is a bit slower. So for the first couple of months, it's still a little bit of getting used to. But yeah, I spent most of my time for the first month like looking at New York State Department of Health as the news and just like reading articles. And I think that's something you have to get used to, unfortunately. But as session picks up and everything starts to fall into place, things do get pick up really fast, like they are right now. I feel like I'm constantly doing something now. Well, rather before I would answer like maybe like 3 emails a day. So I'm just getting used to the pace, and yeah, that's what I got.
Yeah, you probably wish you could go back to the quieter times when it gets busier. This is all incredibly helpful. Thank you, guys. I think getting into the next question, I think what's unique and interesting about where you guys are at in the fellowship is that you've had, like Chris has said, 4 or 5-ish months of experience in the fellowship, but you're also not that far removed from the application and the whole interview process, which you guys are all very familiar with. So obviously it's a unique process. And so I'd love for you guys to talk about, a little bit about your experience with that process and, tips or advice you would have for students who are applying to the fellowship. A lot of these guys are gearing up to apply with the deadline next week. So, from your perspective, how can they stand out in the application and the interview process, and what was your experience like?
I think the biggest thing I wanted to highlight is being ready to change your essay once the actual positions are posted. The fellowship website that the state has is not helpful in showing what positions are out there because they change. Like we could sit and I could say, this is where I am, but my agency is very small and they could take no fellows next year, or DOH could have no fellow, or DOH will have fellows, but Nelke's office won't have fellows because they have her, like that's tricky because I went in thinking I wanted to do education or work for chamber, or do, whatever. And then once the list got posted, I had to very quickly change what I was interested in doing, which meant like rewriting the essay and also just changing your expectations of what the next 2 years could be for you. So going in, knowing that if you only have it in your heart that you want to work for one specific agency, I don't know if this is the right fellowship for you. If you're interested in kind of being thrown in somewhere where you can really learn somewhere random, then that is like, I don't know if Chris knew in January that he wanted to go work for DOT. I don't know if that was in his heart, but like going in with like I just want to learn by like how state government functions and that like everybody has a role in making the state turn. I think that that's really helpful in knowing. And I think at least my interview with Christina and Ashley was very, we just walked through my experience, my grades, why I wanted to do the fellowship. And the other thing they really ask you is, at least is that if you have any interest in staying in Albany or not, because a lot of the fellows are from New York City and have no interest in moving anywhere other than New York City, which is crazy because I don't know how anybody is surviving on $70,000 a year in New York City, but to each their own down there. Where I know I had a friend who moved up here and was like, could get a 3-bedroom apartment for the same cost as an apartment in Manhattan. So, you kind of give and take a little bit. But you kind of being from this area or living in this area, I don't know if there's any virtual students on here, know that, you're willing to stay in Albany. So that wasn't that difficult. And then my interview with Kara and Brittany, who run the fellowship program, was very relaxed. It was more focused on where I wanted to be in the fellowship and where my experience would lend me to being. They kind of ask you to make a top 5 list of placements. So having that in and having like your experience that backs up why you might be a good fit for X, Y, and Z, because you are kind of competing against other fellows as well for different placements, which I wasn't really as aware of. Like every placement gets like 5 resumes and they can choose from those 5 to interview who they want. And then they can bring you in for additional interviews. I was the only person who applied to my agency. So my boss called me at like 1 p.m. and was like, oh, you want to work for us? and was very surprised. So that's how mine went. But I think that it can be a little competitive for some of the bigger, cooler, flashier opportunities.
I'm going to take this a little bit more on like the UAlbany application side. So I'll say like while you're first applying through Rockefeller, I'll say use your resources that are here. I met with Ashley a number of times, and I also met with Christina a time or two. And that was just the amount of knowledge, like a wealth of knowledge that they were able to portray to me over a number of Zoom meetings was just, I couldn't even like put it into words. So they just helped me so much. They're able to, in terms of like the essay, they were able to read my essay multiple times over, sort of saw like my vision and saw what the core of it should be, and then gave me suggestions or maybe asked me questions for try to get my brain starting to move and roll and roll and roll and try to get like as interesting and as analytical of a paper as I could get. And I would say like in terms of like standing out in the application process, I'd say be yourself is a very cliche thing to say, but I'll say play into something that makes you unique. If you have previous work experience that's very unique that maybe other applicants don't have, maybe highlight that. If you've gone through periods of like hard times and you were very resilient and you eventually were successful, maybe you can include that as part of your essay. If you have a lot of interest in state government, include that. And again, use your resources. I mean, the career and professional development team here, they're great. They're amazing. So if you're very interested in the fellowship, which I figure all of you guys would be if you're on the Zoom call right now, but definitely set up a meeting or two. And I'm not sure where you're at with the essay process, but bring a draft, bring anything you have, bring some ideas. And Ashley, Christina, I think Joan Marzo, is she still there? Joan, yeah, she's great too.
Yeah, she's still
So
here. Yeah.
awesome. Hopefully, did I forget anyone? I hope not.
No, that's it. We're just happy to have one another, really.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Well, those are your resources. Go to them, definitely use them. And yeah.
You're too kind, Chris. Thank you so much.
Agreed. Thanks, Chris.
Well, as Chris and Mo said, first of all, yes, I will also applaud Ashley and Christina. They really helped me, especially. I think it's a thing in the PhD program. We're told to keep our CVs as long as possible. So my CV is like 6, 7 pages. So really trying to cut, and then every time I'm trying to cut something, I feel like I'm letting something part of me go. So I always have a difficulty cutting or reducing my CV. So it really helped me with that, and also with my personal statement. So as Chris said, use your resources for sure. And for my, if I to go into details for my letter, I kept it personal also. Of course, Chris mentioned that earlier, but in my case, for example, my parents were civil servants, so there is a history, so to say, I'm following of civil service in my family a bit, and at the same time, my previous degrees, of course, they related to public administration, and my previous work experiences related to public administration, so it kind of made sense, all fit together. At the same time, I also tried to show what I can offer an agency. So as I spoke earlier, really ability to synthesize unstructured data, do a topic-specific reviews, drawing from practitioner-oriented literature and research literature, and really providing implications, and also prepare briefs and high-level actionable insights based on data or some new areas of research. So those are highlighted skills, you have to, I think, sell yourself in that sense. So that's one of the things that I would suggest. In terms of interviews, of course, besides the interviews inside the Rockefeller College, which were great and very helpful, the interview with civil service was also very insightful. I remember one of the questions was asked me, why cybersecurity? What's your interest in cybersecurity? So that was kind of expected question at the same time. For that, I went out and really looked at the cybersecurity trends, because there is a lot of publicly available reports by big players like CrowdStrike and IBM and all these tech companies that give you really those flashy highlights stats, right? So phishing attacks increased by 442% last year, CrowdStrike. So really trying to understand where the main threats are. And also, I'm sure if a lot of people in the world, the governments in the world are facing the risks in cybersecurity are very shared. That's what I'm trying to say. Cybersecurity issues that are in other part of the world are most likely to be happening here as well. So I would say do your homework, which I'm sure most of you already probably realize you have to do, but really trying to get those, seeing those patterns, I think that really helped me in my interview. And then that really helped me with my interview with the agency because, of course, cybersecurity is not my direct field, but trying to understand the environment, what has been done, I think, and also I researched what other cyber incident response teams do in different states. So that gave me kind of like a landscape overview of what has been done. And of course, some of it applied to New York State, some of it didn't, but also gave me some insight into what can be done also, what other ideas we can domesticate, so to say, in New York State and use. So that's what I did in preparation. I think homework helps. So I was prepared. And I think that worked for me, but I'm sure most of you will do your homework when you know which agency you will go for.
All right, I'm gonna emphasize what everyone said again. Given to what Molly said, I am from New York City, so leaving was a bit hard, given the change in Albany. Life in general is very different. But I did go to school up here, so I was willing to do the 2 years. But keeping that an open mind, because I was very conflicted. I was like, I don't want to come back to Albany. I don't want to stay here. But at the same time, like options are very limited in the city. I think the only thing for them was like the MTA, and I was like, I don't know if I want to do that. So that was one of my decisions to stay here. Given that the resources are very important, yes, use the resources you have. I remember I had a lot of anxiety and I was very scared about what was going to go on after graduation. So I literally wrote my personal statement on Christmas. Like I closed the door and I was like, okay, I'm going to write the personal statement. And then hopefully when we get back, from holidays, I'm going to go over it. And I went over and over and over and I fixed my resume so many times. I added so many things. I took out so many things. So they were very, very helpful in that. Another thing I would say is the personal statement is supposed to be very, very, very important. At least for me, I think that having a master's in political science rather than taking the MPA route was kind of what my biggest fear was because I think last year's cohort only had one political science major. Yeah. So I was a little bit more emphasis on the courses, on experience, and everything I did just because it was like I didn't know how this would fit, and I didn't know that many masters of political science people were in the program. Um, One piece of advice I would say is to trust your gut. I interviewed with 4 agencies. From the beginning, like when you're interviewing, I get that it's nerve-wracking and you're supposed to be nervous, but some things just didn't feel right about some interviews. And that was a sign that the work was just not for me. And every work style is different. And to be fair, I never even thought about doing health policy. And now that's what I do, and I actually really like it. So being really open to that, and knowing what you're gonna like and what you're not gonna like, there's a place for everyone, I would say. But like my biggest fear was like I wasn't gonna find something that was gonna be for me. But thankfully, this worked out. So yeah.
No, that's it. You guys bring up several good points. I mean, I've heard year after year that I've done this, that, fellows have pursued opportunities they wouldn't anticipate, and it's, been something that they've really enjoyed. So I think, Molly's point, all your points, just being open is key in this fellowship, because we don't know the agency placements. I don't know yet. And quite frankly, civil service doesn't even know until after you've applied internally and interviewed. So being flexible and open is key. And yeah, so thank you all very much. And you're all very kind. Thank you. Before I continue on to my next question, I want to kind of open the floor to any student questions, because I think we started out with some great initial questions, but I want to make sure if any students have any specific questions for all the panelists, or maybe one or two of the panelists, now's a great time to ask. And I see we have a few in the chat. I see Wilson, but I see Constance. She mentioned Homeland Security is her concentration. How did you get into that? I think maybe that was more geared towards Tolga. So I guess I'll defer that one to Tolga.
Yes, Constance, as I was mentioning earlier, digital government is my concentration and Homeland Security was not. But if I were to go back in time, I think I should have done that and then into cybersecurity. But I feel like the field you're pursuing is actually, so in that sense, I'm trying to answer your question. I got into it by chance, I would say, but that chance turned into a great opportunity for me to learn more. But I would encourage you to stay in the field. I think it's a very promising field, especially now we realize how with the shift in federal funding and the shift in some public areas in terms of roles from federal to state, we see it in cybersecurity. For example, federal government cut financing for MSISAC, which is like an interstate information sharing center. So a lot of cybersecurity responsibility shifted to the state for in relation to local governments. So I mention this because Homeland Security, since I'm not really trying to promote my agency here, but it's one of the agencies that hasn't been touched in terms of funding. Actually, funding has increased, so I think you're in a very promising field, and I would encourage you to stay in the field if you are still interested. So in that sense, we've been very stable, and cybersecurity is especially, I think, since I know it most now, has been just I think across the board bipartisan support for cybersecurity. So it's one of those areas that I think are more or less could be untouched by the waves that come with time. So I encourage you to stay in the fields.
That's a very good point. And it looks like the next question is for you as well, Batolga. So you're very popular. Are you able to apply your skills, methodological research and writing you learned from your PhD training to your current work? And this is from Wilson.
Yes, Wilson, I think we met before. If I remember correctly, but yes, I would say so. As I was mentioning earlier, I'll talk about research. For example, as I was saying earlier, I've been pulled into different tasks. One of them was really trying to understand the landscape of AI in terms of cybersecurity. So I've been researching different state level legislature that has been proposed or in effect. So I did a literature review also, just trying to understand what the frameworks have been offered in academic literature and seeing if there's something we can use. And also in terms of assessing AI risks. There is many industry level frameworks, but there is some frameworks in academic literature that have not made it to practice yet. So one of the tasks that my supervisor asked to see what can be used to assess risk, and I found a framework proposed based on literature from a few years back, which she found very useful in her line of work as well. Methodologically, I've been one of the tasks that I asked was because I'm a more the qualitative researcher, so I do a lot of interviews and surveys. So one of the things that I was asked to do was to do analysis of the feedback of my agency. Specifically for now, it's my team. My team on the AI pilot that New York State is doing. So the pilot was just finished, I think 3 weeks ago. It was basically, it had two components. It has AI training and then AI chatbot, basically. So I was asked to collect feedback in kind of more like a focus group settings from my colleagues and also to create a survey and to prepare a brief for my executive deputy commissioner. So that's one of the things that I was asked to do. And going forward, I might have to do it for the whole agency. So let's see where that goes. In terms of writing, I realized that I would be providing a lot of briefs because, for example, of course, my supervisor and I think this speaks to most of leadership and everybody, I think, in my agency, we cannot be experts in all fields. So in that regard, one of the briefs I prepared for my supervisor was about cybersecurity in ports. And I had to educate myself a lot, and I had to also to pull a lot of information for her to be able to understand what the key issues are, what the government actions have been to date, and what are the threat actors in this field in terms of cybersecurity. So that involves a lot of writing, and for executive audience, my rule of thumb it's always 1 page. So that really came to writing, synthesizing what we are told in our PhD, or we are really asked in our PhD courses, and for different audiences, I think that's one of the skills that I apply. So I would say everything applies, and I also was pulled by training unit because of my PhD. I think they felt like I could provide some training, which I'm not sure because it was emergency preparedness training. It had some cyber element to it and AI element, but I was humbled by being asked to provide some input on training, which I did. But so yes, at my agency at least, you most likely would be pulled to different areas that will leverage your skills you develop throughout your PhD.
Excellent. Awesome. Okay, looks like we have another question from Victoria. Good evening. My question is, how can I best prepare for the interview with the school and with the state? Should I prepare so it's being blocked like I would for a job or internship? So whoever wants to jump in for this one.
I will jump in quick because I do have to dash in a few minutes, a
Yes.
little early.
I was gonna say, if you want to catch Molly, catch her now.
Yes, I'll do it real quick. I think, yes, prepare as much as you can, like a normal internship. I think that one thing I learned in preparing for internships is research. If you can kind of look at, where other fellows had their experience, or just look into the fellowship and have really good questions about like why state service, why this opportunity, what about your background, and like really knowing how to communicate that efficiently, and tell a story about what is it, what do they call it, like the STAR interview or whatever, where you start with an experience and kind of look through. You can tell I worked at the Career Center at one point, and kind of walking that through, like use real experiences. That's really like, can you tell us one time where you had to work in a group project, and have that in the back of your head of like a very specific experience where you had to do that? Or like, I had somebody ask, they did not ask you this in the internship, in this interview, but asked me once, what were your 3 least favorite qualities people would say about you, which was crazy. But just kind of going in as prepared as possible, I think would be, really important. And just knowing why this experience for you, and, knowing just kind of where you would like to be placed, I think, as I know we've said, go in with an open mind, but also be like, I really like education, or I really like health, and these are why my experiences would lend to that. I think is really important.
Absolutely. Others? I know Sachin has a question. We'll get to you momentarily if anyone else wants to chime in on that one. If not, we can move on.
I could drop in something real quick. I would say I use ChatGPT for this. Actually, I put in like my resume and then some of the descriptions of jobs, and then I said which one would best suit for me and what I thought would actually work. Because again, I interviewed for some, and then after I saw descriptions or just the role of the agency, it wasn't really fitting what I wanted to do. So having that, and kind of seeing where your resume and your experiences align was very important as well.
For sure. Okay, we'll move on to the next student question. So I think Sachin, you might be next. So we'll go to Sachin. Go ahead.
Um, Hi, thank you guys for doing this. So I'm an MPA student finishing this semester, and in that job seeking sort of process, and trying to stay pretty diversified in terms of like what type of roles, because my area of interest is actually in digital government or civic tech, Tolga. So it could touch a lot of different agencies, or even other non-state jobs like municipal government or consulting, which I do now. Um, so my question is sort of like, assuming that you guys were in a similar position, where you weren't putting all your eggs in the fellowship basket, how did you sort of uh, make the decision of like pros and cons of the fellowship versus another type of job, or maybe specifically, since that's kind of broad, like to applying directly to a state agency. Obviously, I feel like one of the pros of applying directly is maybe you have more control over a specific team or something if you're interested in that. Um, and then a con of the fellowship might be like the time commitment. And that's the question. I don't actually know if it feels kind of like a big commitment of being a 2-year program, but maybe it's not in the terms of like how the state moves, right? I know it could be a very long process of like actually getting a job through the state. My partner went through that process, and it did take almost a year maybe before she actually started working and like the whole application process. So yeah, well, maybe we start with that. There's kind of a part two also, but we can start there.
Good question. Anyone want to jump in?
Yeah, I don't necessarily have anything formulated. I'm just going to go off the top of my head with this one. At least in my situation, so I graduated similar to you, I guess similar to you. I don't know. I graduated in December of 2024, and the fellowship did not start until September of the next year. So September 2025. So I had a pretty large gap, and I was sort of thinking the same thing as you, because you're right. There is sort of a thought of putting all of your eggs in one basket. Will you get into the fellowship? And there's a lot of interviews and steps in this process, so it is a little bit daunting. And I'll say, I wouldn't. How do I frame this? um, I would say if you're very interested in the fellowship, take a lot of time. Meet with the team here. Meet with Ashley. Meet with Christina. Put a lot of effort into this and make that your main objective, but um, don't forget about everything else going on around you. So if there's going to be a gap, let's say if you graduate in May, you wouldn't start until September. Like that's a lot of time, and you depending on financial situation, you're probably going to want to be working. So maybe right now, if you do have like an internship or a part-time job in the field, that maybe you'd be able to sort of have as like your backup plan, or being able to network with certain people also in the field or that you've had in previous jobs to sort of have like a network where you're not putting all your eggs in one basket. And let's say something happens, or even if you can get through the entire process and then something happens with your office and they no longer need a fellow, or they no longer have a space, and then something happens, like I would say, yeah, have sort of a backup plan, I would say. But if you're interested in the fellowship, just full steam ahead, just put all your effort in, meet with the team, and yeah, I guess that's it.
Anyone else want to dive in?
Yes, this is based on my understanding of the question, of course. But yes, I agree with Chris. I think, of course, we all have to have a backup plan, right? I did for speaking from as a PhD graduate, of course, the common expectation is to go to academia. But I didn't come from academia originally, so I was practitioner before I did my PhD. So I was drawn to joining a government or seeking a government job, but keeping academic option there as well. And it's just, I think, one of the, besides my interest in state government and government in general, I think the academic jobs were, the field out there is less, it become less stable than it was before, let me put it that way. And that kind of instability or unpredictability, I couldn't really take on that risk. And this fellowship provides with 2 years of guaranteed 2 years, so to say, right? So I needed that stability and also the experience. And also for me, as somebody who has government experience mostly from abroad, I was born in Mongolia. It's also a good segue for my future because, of course, yeah, New York State level experience, I think it can transfer to anything in the future. So it also gives me a good stepping stone, if you will, for the future. So I was thinking from those perspectives. At the same time, it is related to digital government. I know you said the digital government and civic tech interest, and I encourage you also to look at the New York State Digital Service because they do a lot of mostly CX, customer experience focused interventions or work, but I think they could use somebody of your interest and your expertise, because that's one of the places I also checked. So just speaking of keeping options open. And ITS, Information Technology Services, I know they're very technical, but sometimes they would have digital transformation specialist roles. So it's one of the things that I think, that also could potentially be something that to consider. But yeah, I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but just
Yeah, I think that's good. I want to be cognizant of time, but I think like those teams you mentioned are ones that I'm curious about. And I don't know if you guys went through the process too of like, does it make sense to apply directly to a team if you know you want to be on that team or you think you know versus going through the fellowship? And I don't know if any of you had to weigh that pro and con of like, should I apply directly to this to go through the state or go through the fellowship?
I can speak a little bit on that. I did apply to a number of state jobs, I guess in the months during the fellowship, because there's a program where certain entry-level state jobs, I'm blanking on the name, certain entry-level state jobs don't require a civil service test right now.
Help.
NY helps. NY
Yep,
helps.
NY
Yes,
helps.
thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. And thank you,
Yeah.
Nilkes, too. I see that. So I applied for a few different jobs, and NY helps is great, but I didn't get as many responses and as many interviews as I definitely thought I would. Maybe just given the market, maybe my experience. But yeah, right now I feel like I don't know. I think the market right now is in a no hire, no fire phase where there's not a lot of movement, and at least from my classes, I have people who also graduate. Like I have friends that also graduated with master's degrees, friends that graduated with just undergraduate degrees, and there seems to sort of be like a wave of just long periods of time before people get hired, and maybe that's like the norm for people just coming out of college with a degree, but at least from my feeling, it felt a little bit daunting. So again, I applied to the state. I didn't get much traction, but I went through the fellowship, and now I have a 2 years of security, I'll say, which is very like a weight off my shoulders. And it's great because I wouldn't say there's not like immediate expectations for you. Or let's say if you were to go into a private job, there would be immediate expectations for you. And if you aren't providing a certain shareholder value or some other value, maybe you wouldn't last that long. But this is such a great experience to gain experience, I guess. And you have 2 years to prove yourself. And going on to another thing you said about the 2-year contract being sort of like handcuffing you, I guess. I know a few former fellows who they didn't last the full 2 years, but instead what they did was they applied with the state during their fellowship, and they were able to receive full-time employment. So they ended their fellowship a little early, but then they're able to leverage that. And I think a lot of fellows do that, and a lot of them stay within their own agency. Like the fellow that was right before me in DOT, they're a full-time worker now because they left a few months early. They applied, and now they're here. So I would say it would not hurt to apply for sure.
I'll just add on to that. Like certainly we encourage students, like even in the application process, if you're considering Excelsior, like you're more than welcome to apply to state positions while you're waiting for this Excelsior process to kind of roll out, because you'll apply, we'll provide internal school nominations, which I think is actually one of the pros to this fellowship, is you're not competing with every other school out there. You're really just competing with Rockefeller students for a certain number of nomination slots. And so that's definitely a benefit, in terms of the competitive nature of getting in with the state. But it's a process to be nominated, right? You apply, you interview, and there's time in between all of that. And so you're welcome to, you're not locked into just apply to Excelsior. If you want to throw some applications out for other state agencies while you're in that application process, you're certainly welcome to, because it's nothing, it's not a guarantee necessarily that you'll be nominated. What I will say this year is that It's a different and it's a unique year this year. It's slightly shifted due to some state budgetary constraints. And I know Karen and Brittany are going to go over that at their final info session on Thursday, 2 days. And they'll talk about that more in detail. But previously, if you were nominated, it was, you had to commit. We asked the students to basically commit to that. So once that happened, we'd asked you to commit. This year, it's a little bit different due to those constraints. If you're nominated, you'll still go through a process of interviewing with Karen and Brittany like they all did, but you will wait to hear from them to know if you're going to really move on. And it's a whole kind of process that they'll go over in the info session. And I can talk about further after the panel, but so I would say like until that time, you're welcome to apply. But once you've been nominated and then selected by Karen and Brittany, then you're really committing to it. So yeah, I'll let these guys chat further, but those are just some of the kind of the optics of it. I think one of the things with the fellowship too is it's 2 years, sure, but you're not being put into like, and they can speak more to this, but you're not really being put into an entry level position. You're being put into a position kind of in the middle of kind of midway. So that's kind of a perk too, is that you're kind of getting in a little bit above perhaps maybe where you thought you might with certain other positions. So yeah, it's, the decision varies depending on what you want. I don't want to talk too much. I want to leave it up to the panelists if there's anything else they want to add about that. I know Chris talked a lot, had some really good insight. If anyone else wants to dive in, otherwise we can go to, I know we're kind of approaching 6. So I know we're approaching 6, so I don't want to keep it too much longer. I'll just finish with one more question, kind of concluding question, and then we can kind of wrap up. So how do you think the fellowship so far has shaped your longer term career goals or interests so far, right? So many of you talked about, not many of you, but a few of you have talked about getting into agencies you didn't anticipate. So how has this experience shaped or formed your career goals, short and long term, I guess, and your interests?
For me, I would say it just reaffirmed my interest in state government. A few years ago, or I'd say even before undergrad, both my parents were civil servants. So I kind of got that. Oh, someone just raced past my window at a motorcycle. Okay.
Never a dull moment.
Yeah. So both my parents were civil servants. So there was sort of like a public service motivation that kind of just grew from conversations at the dinner table or just going through life with hearing experiences from them. So I always wanted to go to New York State government, and just having experience here in the state DOT. I also had a few other experiences with the state previously, and nothing has changed that. Like, I don't want to jump into the private sector. I would say it's been a positive experience so far with the fellowship. Like I said previously, it's been a lot of just learning, like being a sponge, just absorbing as much as possible so far. But there have been a lot of positives in there. It's been a really cool experience. I know everyone's fellowship experience is different, but depending on your office and who your supervisor is, you could just have a million different experiences, which are great, and just take advantage, really. And I've had a cool experience because I'm sort of at the upper level of the agency with the commissioner. And I've had a lot of interactions with like the assistant commissioners and other people in at the top of the chain. I've been able to like get lunch with some of those people or get drinks after work and just learn and make those connections, which has been really, really cool. And I look forward to the next year and a half and seeing where it takes me, seeing what more I learn, and hopefully we'll be able to stay with my agency or go to another New York State agency at the end of the day.
I'll piggyback back off of that one. I think having various experiences everywhere, like I said, I did nonprofit, I did local, and I did state. I think being in intergovernmental affairs let me stay in the middle between it. We don't do a lot of work with New York City, unfortunately, just because that is very separate with agencies. We like to stick with New York City and then upstate, and then we separate it. But in general, intergovernmental affairs just seems to be like the next step for me. I don't know if that'll be with the agency or not. We'll see how that goes as well. but I'm open to it. The experiences that I've had is really good. So being able to find a middle place was good for me, my experience.
Yeah, I think for me it reaffirmed my interest in state government jobs. At the same time, also it made me, as I was mentioning earlier, regret that I didn't do any cybersecurity courses before. It's if I were to go back in time, I would have done that. But now I'm learning, of course, and there is also, as I mentioned earlier, some certificate opportunities. And yes, I think for as far as career trajectory after this, I think I have more specialized focus. Well, at least one more because mine was more dissertation. My dissertation was about strategic management of technology in county governments. It was New York State county government. So now I actually know more about cybersecurity. So it kind of helps me to bridge what I researched to the practice as well. At the same time, I've seen more trends in different, it seems across the places that I was interested in seeking or future careers, including New York State. There is a lot of cybersecurity related jobs, and also helped me to realize really one and fight one fear I had that cybersecurity is such a technical field, and me as a social scientist, what's my role in there? Now I learned that there is a lot of, for example, policy evaluation, program evaluation that needs to be done in the field. There is a lot of research that needs to be done in the field, and in the end, the cybersecurity is a social technical phenomena. It's not only technology. We still have to build capacities. We still have to talk with the local governments. There is still human element to manage and organization elements also to transform so that we can leverage technology and be cyber prepared. So I think that I reaffirmed that even in what's seemingly a technical field, there is still room for social scientists, and speaking, of course, for public administrators because we are technical social scientists. So I think there is that was one of the things that I think I will carry forward, and also I think looking just at the trajectory of works and where the careers are going, I think cybersecurity is such a field that's just has been growing exponentially within the last few years, and I think it will continue doing so. So I think it will just open more doors.
Amazing. Well, thank you all so much. I know we're past the 6 o'clock, hour, so I want to be cognizant and respectful of everyone's time, but the panelists' time as well. So, with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up. What I'll say to the students is it's a reminder that the application deadline is a week from tomorrow, Wednesday, January 28th. That's the internal application through Rockefeller, and that's when you would apply and interview for internal nomination consideration. We are still very much available for any of you who haven't connected with us yet or want to reconnect with us prior to the deadline. I know Christina and I have some time leading up to that, so you're welcome to schedule an appointment on Handshake, come to our drop-in hours, just reach out if you have issues scheduling too. Always just feel free to email us too. Yeah, and as I mentioned, there will be one final info session with Kara Pangburn and Brittany Camiso with New York State Civil Service. That will be on this Thursday, the 22nd at 12 p.m. It's a WebEx call. So I've been sending out email notifications, but I'll make sure in the follow-up to the students who attended an RSVP that we share that information as well. That's a very good session to go to if you haven't already. They've hosted about 3 or 4, so it's the same session each time. So if you've been, you don't need to go again. But if you haven't, definitely go. Like I said, there are a few shifts in our process this year due to some state budgetary constraints, unfortunately. It's not affecting our number of nominations, but it will affect the number of openings slightly. So I know Brittany and Kara will go over that a little bit more in detail and just overall their experience with this. Yeah, so, and the kind of recommendations and things like that, a lot of what we talked about, be open, but also feel free to, express where specifically you want to be as well. I've had Kara tell me time and time again, tell the students to tell me where they want to go. It helps make my job a little bit easier when they're nominated and play this giant game of chess and helping them connect with the agencies. So I know Kara and Brittany will go over that in more detail. So Thank you all once again. Thank you panelists. It's always great to see you guys. It's been so long. It's been a minute since I've seen you, and I love seeing how far you've come with the fellowship and hearing about your experiences. So thank you. It was really insightful and interesting, and entertaining. So thank you. And I hope it continues to go well, and stay in touch with us, and students don't hesitate to reach out. So with that, I'll go ahead and I'll stop the recording, and I'll